Let me just make sure my levels are good. Welcome. All right, that's
Jesus,
good.
that was terrifying.
That was good. All right. Oh, we got to count down. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I'm your host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the pseudo-intellectual soy boy, a.k.a. Comrade Soy Boy, a.k.a. Hot Toy's great-great-great-grandson. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Ty.
Hey, I'm very excited for this episode.
Dude, I am as well, and if you're excited to hear it, please make sure that you like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and whatever podcatcher of choice you have, just rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us out quite a bit. Even if you're not listening to the episode, subscribe, that way you download. The downloads help. The downloads help. But Ty, why are you so excited for this film?
Because I picked it. And it also happens to be
That's pretty fair.
I think a really interesting story. It's not in English, which I thought was cool, because all the other films we did were in English. And it tells a really, really interesting story that I think we can pick apart history and some things that still happen today.
Yeah, so I had no idea what it was about. You were just like, it's going to be good.
I just realized, did we even say what the name of the movie was?
And I was like...
I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And I was like, yeah, sure, let's watch it. But wow, yeah, this I remember joking with you and saying, why don't we do this for Columbus Day, because it would have been appropriate then as well. But we are doing Even the Rain, originally titled Tambien la Lluvia, and is this the final film we're doing, or?
Yeah, I think this is the last
left?
one left of November, so we're capping out our Indigenous Spotlight Month with Even the Rain.
You said it better than I ever could, Ty. That's right. We are capping out our Indigenous Spotlight Month. Even the Rain.
You just added out my version and use yours. Like, you gotta stop taking my words and reusing them, man.
You're not even gonna make the outtakes, you fucking hack. Okay? What do you think this is? And if you think this is wild, just wait till we start posting all of our comedy ideas that we'll never ever get to film.
We have so many,
many on the Patreon, guys. This is gonna be a fun time. And guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, please head to the Patreon. I am currently making the audio Booch available to all tiers for a limited time, not just the $9 tier. So you too can learn how to survive anything, anywhere. A handbook of survival skills for every scenario and environment. We have Chapter 3 being uploaded this week. We're doing one chapter every week. Chapter 1, Ty, in case you were wondering, was survival psychology. Chapter 2 was survival clothing. And Chapter 3 was what your survival kit should have.
I'm excited to become a Patreon subscriber so I can get access to these. It's the only way he'll let me. But I am excited.
I gave you the password of the username. Just sign in and listen to the stuff. It's right there. You got it.
Yeah.
You get that access, dude. All this power,
nice
that you might be drunk with. But yeah, wow, what a film. So I guess before we head into it, I'm getting a call from my ancestors, from the Taínos of Hispaniola, Ty, and do you know what it's saying?
Are they warning you of spoilers?
My word, they are warning me of spoilers. That's correct. The spoiler alert is in full effect. If you have not yet seen Even the Rain, please make sure that you go and watch it. And normally I'm like, fuck it, if you don't feel like it, just spoilers, and then listen to the podcast. But honestly, this is such a good movie. Watch it. Pause this right now. Go watch it, and then come back and listen to our deep dive. Well, it's going to be Ty's deep dive and my shallow dive.
It's probably the deepest film that I think we've probably done this month. We've done some good stuff, but I think this one was definitely the most serious of all of them.
Don't you dare besmirch Yellowstone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Ever
Yellowstone was
house.
pretty intense. So.
Okay. Nothing's
ranchers,
deeper
man.
than the struggles of Casey's wife, Monica. Let's talk about Casey, though. No. But yeah, so with that spoiler alert in effect, how about we move into the movie? Ty, you want to give him the plot?
Yeah, 2010's Even the Rain. As the director and his crew shoot a controversial film about Christopher Columbus in Cochabamba, Bolivia, local people rise up against plans to privatize the water supply.
Boom. And just setting some context before we even move into this, a lot of you should know that this is an actual event that had happened. So it's kind of historical fiction, as in like them shooting the film, but the events that are happening at the forefront of the film with the water protectors and everything actually happen. I'm going to read a little excerpt from an article that
Beautiful.
is linked to in the show notes. It says, in 1997, the World Bank forced the Bolivian government to privatize its water system in the city of Cochabamba as a condition for a loan package. Cochabamba is Bolivia's third most important city with a population of 600,000 people. After 2 years in 1999 and a secret ballot in the fall, the Bolivian government approved Law 2029 that gave the monopoly of water resources to the international consortium Aguas del Tunari, led by the American company Bechtel, the Spanish Abengoa, and 4 Bolivian companies as shareholders. The law was so abusive that in its Article 76, it did not allow the people of Cochabamba to collect water of cisterns or water from rain without a license. Long story short, they won. And just like we'll go into when we discuss this movie, but there was an actual event. I believe it was called the first water war of the 21st century. It's been titled, at least in the article that I've linked to here. And I was blown away by that, by the fact that they actually won, because I was like, yeah, I could totally see this happening. But
how did they win? They rose up, right? They protested. People were killed and injured, but again, it seems like protest is the only way to actually fight back. There was no other avenue for them to explore to get this victory.
Yeah, but were there targets back then? That's the question.
Yeah.
If no targets, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I mean, as long as target's safe, we're all good, right?
Yeah, that's what I've always said. But yeah, absolutely right, and I think that's an important part of this. Let's talk about Daniel real quick, because he's one of the most, if not the most, prominent and important character of the film. He was one of the natives of Cochabamba to show up to an open casting call for this Christopher Columbus film that's being shot in Bolivia, which is not where Christopher Columbus originally landed.
No.
But we get into that in a little bit too, as far as how they feel about historical accuracy. But,
right.
But yeah, Daniel is one of the local workers whose daughter originally wanted to be in the film. I don't think he showed any interest initially.
No, he was bringing her there to get her an audition.
Yeah, but his tenacity and attitude made him the perfect casting for Hatuy, who historically was a Taino chieftain who fought back against the Spaniards on Hispaniola, and then later in life he actually went to Cuba to warn the Tainos there about Spanish imperialism. And I didn't know about any of this at all. And when I was looking more up on YouTube about Hatuy, there was most of the videos had scenes from this movie in it, because I guess like it's very accurate in the way they depict it, or it's one of the few media resources they have to depict what happened with his rebellion, that it made it into all of these YouTube videos. Did you know about any of this or no?
Before the movie, no, I didn't.
No, neither did I. And technically, Hispaniola becomes a Dominican Republic, so that's like my history. And I mean, I barely know anything about United States history, and I have a fucking degree in it. So. And actually, speaking of that history real quick, I know I mentioned in a few episodes I've been listening to the audiobook People's History of the United States, which is written by Howard Zinn and starts off with Columbus, quote-unquote, discovering the New World. and this movie is dedicated to his memory after he passed away.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I was like, oh crap! I was like, Memory of Howard Zinn, get the fuck out of here. Um, and but yeah, so Daniel kind of ends up being the perfect casting for Hatui, but while in his real life outside of acting, he's fighting this fight against, I believe the name of the company is Multinational.
Yes.
And they're trying to privatize Cochabamba's water, and
they're not even from Bolivia, right? That company, I think they said, is from
California.
Yeah, London and California based. So like, they're fighting international forces from taking over their water supply.
And this, not only did this actually happen in Cochabamba, like I mentioned, but it was also very reminiscent to me of Coca-Cola's activity. Are you familiar with any of their stuff or no?
A little bit, but not in great detail.
Yeah, so I'll, once again, another article is linked in the show notes, but I'm just going to read a small excerpt from it when it talks about Coca-Cola's bottling plant that was put in the village of Kaladera in Rajasthan at the end of 1999, same year that the Cochabamba water war was kicking off. God, it sounds so much more fun than it was.
Yeah, it does.
Because god damn, what a great name for a place.
Funny story in Thailand. They do a day where they all shoot each other with water guns for the whole day. So it almost sounds like that, but it was not as much fun though.
Ooh, the Cochabamba water war. Oh, what do you? It sounds like a Community episode. Something they would collect money for to give to COVID relief. But yeah, so it says local villagers testify that Coca-Cola's arrival exacerbated an already precarious situation. Official documents from the government's water ministry show that water levels remained stable from 95 until 2000 when the Coca-Cola plant became operational. Water levels then dropped by almost 10 meters over the following 5 years. Locals feel Caladera could become a dark zone, the term used to describe areas that are abandoned due to depleted water resources. And Coca-Cola has done this in multiple countries. So, when we're talking about imperialism here, we're talking about capitalistic imperialism and colonization as well. And while this movie isn't specific toward, your typical Native Americans of North America, this is, more about the natives of South America. And I mean, the Columbus's story is pretty much how the history of the United States starts, even in the People's History book. So, I think it is very important. And also, Monica mentioned it in the, when we were talking in the Yellowstone episode, like, he's credited as the guy who discovered the United States, even though he never fucking stepped foot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Daniel's big issue is that he is caught up in the middle of this water war, and they're asking him to choose between his role in the film, because he is such an important part of it and he can't be locked up, he can't be beaten, or staying true to his people. Because, I mean, realistically, when the movie's going to come in and the movie's going to leave, and it's just going to be a blip on the radar of their history. Like, what they do regarding this water fight today is what matters. It matters a lot more than the movie. What do you have to add to this about Daniel?
Yeah, so I think Daniel's probably the most interesting character in the film. He grabs the attention of Sebastian, the director, immediately, and the executive producer, Costa. I don't know if it's Costa or Costa. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but
yeah, you could say it either way. I think
Costas. I think it's Costas, right? Costa. Okay. He's very much against casting Daniel, right? Like he can tell right away that he's going to be trouble, because just from that moment when they're on the line waiting for the auditions and they tell the people, we're not going to be able to see anybody else. He kind of starts a resistance right there, right? He gets everyone fired up and he won't take no for an answer. And while, he's perfect for this role, I think, Costa realized that he's going to be very difficult to work with. And it starts an interesting relationship between them as the film progresses. But yeah, Daniel's not in it. He didn't even come here to be in the movie. He's not looking for fame and fortune. He just wants, the bare minimum for his people. He's very much an honorable man trying to do what he at least believes is right. And he even says at one point, when Costa asks him to step down, he says some things are more important than money. When he's trying to throw cash at him and say, don't get involved, we'll give you 10,000. And he says, some things are more important than money. And that's true for him. Getting this water and getting the rights for his people is very vital. And I think
it was really...
No, go ahead.
Sorry, it was really amazing to see somebody actually walk the walk too. Like he was, you would normally see this being a story about somebody selling out, but like no, he was in it, man. Like he didn't compromise his morals.
No, not at all. It's pretty awesome to see. And just in general, I think this movie takes a really interesting way of telling the story. They could have focused just on the water war. They could have focused on, Columbus's story, but instead they tell the story of them making a movie about Christopher Columbus while this is happening, where they're filming. So it gets, I think it has a great job of kind of comparing and contrasting what happened back then with the events that are occurring, more in present day. And it does it for the most part pretty successfully, and really shows you that a lot of the same issues that these people faced, these natives faced back then, are still very much relevant today.
Yeah, it was a really, really great comparison that they did. It made me uncomfortable in a few places. Partially because it's kind of like, all right, like watching, even though, they're like way back, but, like technically watching my ancestors go through these things, which I already knew that, there are mothers who drowned their babies. I already knew that there are people who died, after bleeding out because they got their hands cut off because they didn't give enough gold. Like I already knew about that stuff, but to see it like visually represented, was a whole other thing. But, the other thing that made me uncomfortable is that these scenes that we're seeing, we know that they're actors portraying these scenes. Like we know that that they're actors performing these scenes. So, like they like I saw stuff and I kind of got worried for the actors because it obviously didn't look like it was behind the scenes stuff. It looked like people who were being hurt actually were being hurt. And I was like, oh, like how did they do are these practical effects? Like stuff like,
yeah.
After making a movie, you think about it from that perspective.
It's an interesting point too, because there's that part where they do try to shoot this scene where the mothers drown their babies, and the director Sebastian's trying to explain to these people that it's safe. They're not going to actually have to put their babies under the water. They just have to step in with the babies and
pretend, and then it's going to be swapped out.
And then they're going to use dolls, and they won't do it. They refuse to, because they won't put their children even in the slightest possibility of being injured here. And I'm sorry, this is actually where Daniel said some things are more important. I think, or he says, Daniel, some things are more important in your film. When Sebastian says he wants to shoot the scene, he says some things are more important than your film, and just he like repeats that, and then they leave, right? They won't shoot the scene, and I think Costa says, "Let's just move on. Let's do the next scene," because I think throughout the film we see the director Sebastian. He kind of, I think feels for these people, but at the same time, nothing's more important than getting his movie done. And whenever, it comes to a moment where he has to choose between the scene he wants to shoot and the lives and importance of these people, he always chooses the film. But Daniel will always choose his people. So it's an interesting way of looking at, them compared.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this movie is liberalism in effect, right? Because,
yeah. Yep.
You have people who... they want to shoot a movie that talks very honestly about Christopher Columbus. Like they believe that they are like breaking new ground here. Like they are shattering people's minds by creating this film, this piece of art. But they are cutting corners wherever they can. And part of that is because of Costa in the beginning. He's very much like. Like we could pay certain people cheaper, and all natives are the same. It doesn't matter that we're shooting in Bolivia and using these natives instead of using actual Tainos or people of Taino heritage. Like he even says at one point you can give them $2 a day and they feel like kings. Like like they are still exploiting these people the way that Columbus exploited the natives in Hispaniola and all throughout South America. And that was actually noted pretty well by Roger Ebert. I know that I used a review of his while we were discussing Pocahontas, so I decided why not do the same thing for this one. And he has a pretty good outline of the film there. You know, you can go to in the show notes and sources, read the whole thing yourself. But he has this very interesting sign-off when he says it, and he says, "The performance by Luis Tosar as the producer is confident and sturdy." I believe that producer being Costa.
Yeah.
And he says, Gael Garcia Bernal, who was the director in the movie Sebastian, is wimpy and not clearly defined, but that's in the nature of the character. The movie is brave to raise the questions it does, although at the end I looked in vain for a credit saying no extras were underpaid in the making of this film.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
So did I. I was like, oh,
that's
shit,
pretty cool. I mean, it's true, though, right? Like, I mean, in the movie, Costa says he picked this place because it's full of starving natives, and that means thousands of extras, right? And there's even that moment where Sebastian and Costa they go, and I don't know if it's supposed to be like the governor or the mayor or someone along those lines, but you know, he's welcoming to their city, and you know, he's like getting them drinks and stuff, and they're mingling.
Yeah, I called him the Latino Giuliani. There's something about his look, bro. He looks so much like Giuliani to me.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Shitty politician, but yeah.
Yeah, he's talking about how resources are scarce and you need money from other countries. That's why they have to, you know, privatize the water. And I think Sebastian says, like, you know, if you raise the cost of water 300%, how can these people pay it at $2 a day? And he turned around and says, you know, well, that's curious because from what I understand, you're paying your extras $2 a day. And Sebastian says, well, you know, the budget's tight. And you know, Giuliani says, you know, isn't it for all of us, right? And it's actually Costa who's like, well, you know, maybe you could do something. You can help us out. Like, kind of, why don't you loosen up on them? And, you know, he responds, you can't give an inch or they'll drag us back to the Stone Age. And I thought that was such an interesting scene, that whole part, because it's just constantly, you know, like you said, the classic liberal thing. Sebastian's like, you know, how can they pay that on $2 a day? Well, you're paying them $2 a day. What are you doing to improve their lives? You didn't come in here and go, I'll give you guys $6 a day to be extras, right? You know, it's
you're perpetrating the same stuff. You just don't like that somebody else is doing it.
Yep.
You know, and so that what I loved about this film was how meta it was, and the idea and the theme of like being exploitative. You're trying to produce a movie that has a message that'll raise awareness of a history of marginalization of Native peoples, but meanwhile there are people being decimated right in front of you, people that are being victimized right in front of you. And honestly, as the production team coming into that location, you have so much more power than you think you do. Like, and in some ways they flexed it, and in some ways they didn't. Like, They played a very political game. They tried to be like, oh, maybe you could do something, but they didn't really push that hard. And I thought that was so interesting. And I love the characters in this movie, because when you said Daniel is probably the most interesting character, I respectfully disagree with you in that, just because, you know, like there are, there's so much complications. Costa's definitely one of them. And also so is Sebastian, though, because everyone ends up in a different place than where they started. And it's wild to have that arc for so many different characters.
That's true. That's very true.
And, you know, and I really like that. And
Daniel doesn't actually change, you know, he stays who he was from the beginning. I think, you know, he calls Costa whiteface in the beginning, right? And they clearly don't like each other. He does. And at the end, he's hugging him and thanking him. So, you know, I guess that's a little bit of his journey. But yeah, that's very true.
He gave him some yucca at the end, which was beautiful.
And what I think is so great is there's several times where they actually highlight, you know, the crew kind of abusing the native people, right? There's the part where Costa uses the natives to actually put up the cross instead of using cranes and a professional crew, which Sebastian does call him out on it, you know, at that point. And directors, you know, he as a director, and he's like, someone could have gotten hurt. Costa's like, it's fine. We saved so much money doing this. You know, it's constantly cutting those corners. One what else? There was even this scene where they're all doing the table read, and the actor playing Christopher Columbus, right? Who's actually a really interesting character as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I actually don't know what his name was in this film, unfortunately. Anton.
Columbus. Okay.
Yeah, Anton. He so he's to me, he seemed like he was the big name actor that they got for this film, right? He's the one that they used to like kind of headline it a bit. Because Costa even says it at one point, like, without you, we're fucked, right?
Yeah, he's their Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, so Anton, he's doing the read. And he really gets into character, and everyone's getting up and they're walking around, and he walks up to, this woman who's just working there. I think she was serving food, right, for them. She must have worked for like the catering company or whatever was there. And
yeah, she was part of craft services.
Yeah, and he does like this whole thing where he like grabs her earring because it looks like it's gold, and he does this whole scene.
Yeah, he goes big method.
Yeah, and and he's like, oh, us actors, we're so over the top, like he apologizes and gives it back to her. But like looking at her face kind of really upset me watching that scene, because she's just putting up with it. And I think that's what made me the saddest, because like, if somebody were to touch your face that you didn't know, or take something that belongs to you, you would immediately try to like jump up and stop them. And she doesn't even say anything. She stands there and she takes it. She barely, moves at all. And she just kind of like gives that, awkward, like half smile when he gives it back. And that really, really upset me, and I think he didn't mean it in a way to disrespect her, but it's kind of that classic, like almost like liberal thing, right? Like where, hey, I'm one of the good guys, so it's okay. I can do and say these things.
Yep. You get like my whole crusade recently, right? You can slut shame Melania Trump because, you're on the right side.
And for context, like a lot of people have been doing that, and you've been calling them out on it, right?
Yeah, I haven't been a fan of the liberal response being like, oh, Jill Biden is a doctor, she's an academic, while Melania Trump was a naked model. And it's like, listen, like, I get that Melania Trump sucks for a lot of reasons, like, but there's no reason to slut shame anybody, because like, as feminists, as progressives, like, it's not okay when they do it. It shouldn't be okay when we do it. But but that's something I'm saving for a housekeeping episode. Right. But yeah, it's great that you bring this scene up, because what I saw from it was the person who seemed really uncomfortable by it was the male coworker of that woman.
Yeah.
After she has her earring taken from her, and the movie does a really great job, in my opinion, of showing what happened, but the way in which they do it is they might show a scene that they're actually filming, like something that's going to make it into the movie, and Anton is in full Christopher Columbus makeup, and Daniel is in his full Hatui makeup. But also they'll show you scenes of rehearsals, like the table read you just mentioned, or the rehearsal they have in the church where, they're having that whole speech where Bartolome de las Casas is there. And who was the other guy? Do you have his name offhand? The character he played?
I don't, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Okay, he played one of the other Dominican priests that was not sent to any of those islands for anything good, but ended up empathizing with the natives at some point later on. But anyway, the point is that, like, even during that scene, he's giving this amazing speech about how the natives should be more in control of their own lives and blah, blah, blah. And while he's giving it, all of the workers who are actually putting up the church, who are natives, of Bolivia, they are completely silent. And there's a lot of that going around, that even when it's people trying to tell accurate history, it's still somebody else telling the history of marginalized people, because these guys are Spanish, I believe, right?
Yeah,
like,
they're
from Spain.
They're from Spain. They're obviously very white, compared to these very native looking people that they're working with.
Yeah, and I also want to note that that Sebastian makes it a point to choose individuals who have very exaggerated features as the natives. There are a lot, in his movie, there are a lot of people who come to this open casting call looking for money, but, he goes with the individuals who might have larger teeth, larger noses, more pronounced brows, cheekbones, jutting chins, things like that. Meanwhile, there are people who have less drastic features on their faces, but, I think that also shows his own inner colonizer. While he is, once again, he's trying to do something that he believes is good and important, he himself is still choosing to portray the natives in this way. He himself is still bringing his own biases to this. But yeah, constantly having the natives, whether it's in the past or in the present, not really be able to speak on the matters that are affecting them. I thought that was used to great effect, and I really love that they did it. That they did it sometimes as a scene, sometimes as a rehearsal, sometimes as a table read, and that I thought that was awesome. And then juxtaposing it with the water war, I thought was a bold move. And once again, I didn't even know that it was real. So that was
some great observations. Awesome. But yeah, I think Sebastian's thing is he's trying to stay as authentic, right, to the experience as possible. Like, he's the one that demanded they filmed it in all Spanish, right? Costa wanted to film it in English because he said we would have gotten double the money and double the audience, I think he says.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, he's not, but Costa's like, no, we're filming it in Spanish, and I think a lot of the actors, playing these indigenous people aren't even speaking Spanish, right? They're speaking what their native language, would be in that area. Forgive me, I'm not sure, but I thought that was pretty impressive too. So there's little touches where you're like, okay, like I see, you're trying to, you think you're doing the right thing, right? You think you're trying to do the right thing. Because it even jumping ahead a little bit later on, Sebastian says, this is just like, this event will be forgotten, right? It'll end, it'll be forgotten, but our movie will live on forever. As
so funny,
right? Man. Like, these events are literally happening before his eyes. People are dying. They have a chance to help, and he's like, our movie's more important. This movie about Christopher Columbus,
That's the same mentality of people being like, oh, like 250,000 people died in 2020 of COVID-19, and that sucked, but like Wonder Woman 84. Like, they made it happen, man, and that's the real triumph. Like, that's the same mentality. And while we are talking about Sebastian and Costa, we do see that Sebastian is the one who kind of does follow his passion a little more. And while he does seem outwardly to be the more compassionate of the two main heads of this movie, showrunners, I know it's not the proper term, but he shows his values are with the movie. Like, even his own actors, he won't keep 100% safe because it's the movie he cares about. But meanwhile, Costa, who is the penny pinching one, he's the one who decides to bribe Daniel to keep him out of the protests. That way they can finish making the movie. He also becomes very close to Belen, who is the daughter of Daniel. And at first, my mind went to the worst place because these guys, I know they're Spanish filmmakers, but they are representing very Hollywood ideals in the way they're represented, I think. And yeah, I like went to Weinstein territory. I'm like, yo, this guy is, taking advantage of Daniel's daughter while she's on film. Because, there's a scene where she has like her arm around him and stuff. But it turns out that they actually just got to know each other really well. And that's what changed him. Like, he is put in a position by the end of the film where he has to nut up or shut up, where he is the only person who has the resources that and these resources are afforded to the production team and not to any of the people in Bolivia to keep them safe from the uprising that's happening right now. And he's the only person who can help Daniel's daughter and get her some medical help, get her to safety. And he's the only person who does it. Well, when I say he's the only person who can, I mean anybody on the film crew can, but he's the only one who does it. He puts his money where his mouth is and actually steps up. And I thought that was a really beautiful moment.
It's a great scene because he's the one that's trying to get them all on the road so they can finish filming. And Daniel's wife is like begging him for help, and he's like, I'll send somebody. And she's like, they'll never make it. They can't get through. Like, you have the resources to do it. and she says, you're our friend, you know, and I think that really hits him when she says that. And he's like, I am the only one that can probably save her at this moment. She's literally bleeding out, he's told. And Sebastian doesn't want him to go, right? Sebastian tells him the movie's more important. He can't go in there. But he does anyway. He does anyway. He chooses to go and do the right thing at the cost of the film.
What's also interesting is how Sebastian kind of ends up being the only one at the end who sticks by the film. Like, even the actors, when they see how terribly the local police are treating everyone, just abusing everyone and brutalizing them, they're like, yo, like, we got to get out of here. They're afraid for their own lives. They're afraid for everyone else's lives.
Yeah, and, I mean, they recognize, they're like, stop it, you bastards. Like, they're like screaming out the window and stuff. And Sebastian's like, stop, right?
Yeah, he just wants to keep quiet and get this fucking film done, bro. And what a turn for him, because he did seem to be that wimpy character. And I guess remember when we were talking about toxic masculinity that Steve represented in Dawn of the Dead during our October horror retrospective? Like, you don't have to be like the big aggressive guy. Sometimes you could just be, the little fucking snake that's selfish and only looking out for yourself. And that also is very toxic behavior, and that's exactly what
absolutely.
He exhibited.
I mean, Kosa's definitely the tougher one, right? He's kind of the more harder one, and he's the one that decides to do the right thing, and help these people. And I thought it was interesting too when they do get to Berlin, they go to get her to the hospital, and someone tells him that he'll never be able to get through, all the roads are blocked, and he says, I will, and she's like, how? He's like, with money. Because money always talks, and he has the money to pay off the police, to get her safe and anyone else who's injured. And we see money as a big part of this throughout the film. There's even a part where Daniel's arrested, right? And Costa actually, bribes the police to let him go, and it's only temporary. They're gonna have to bring him back after the film is shot. To which, of course, Sebastian's against at the time, and Costa's okay with, it seems. But if you have money, you have the power, and we just see that time and time again throughout the film.
Can I talk about the bail real quick?
Yeah.
So yeah, in that moment, like, even Costa tells him, he's like, you can tell him that the cops are gonna come arrest him after. I thought he would have at least a little time to get the makeup off. They literally come. Honestly, the day hasn't even wrapped yet.
I don't think they knew they were coming.
You don't think they knew? Oh, they probably didn't want to give him a chance.
Yeah, because Costa looked surprised too. I think they were supposed to bring him back to the jail. And I think the police were like, we can't trust that they're going to do that, so they came for him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. I thought it was literally like Sebastian had the chance to tell him, and then he just didn't. I want to talk about this moment where they're all at dinner.
Yes, that was one of my notes too.
Yes, yeah, discussing the history of Columbus. Yeah, they get into it at dinner when Las Casas, I'm just going to call them by the people who they're playing in the movie within the movie. Las Casas is talking about his character Las Casas and making him sound like this real hero, but Anton, the dude who's playing Columbus, is talking about all of his shortcomings, and with multiple historical figures, everybody just starts going back and forth about like how their legacies might have been tarnished by certain things they did, or even if you were a rebel, you still acknowledged the rule of the crown, and you still contributed to the atrocities that were thrust upon these people. I really like this discussion, and it was interesting to see Anton, who seems to have such an objection to certain things, still be a part of this film.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they even asked him at one point why he's doing it. I don't really know why he's doing it still, though. I don't know if he really knew why. He obviously, he's a drunk, and he has some issues. There's a part where he goes to call his family, they won't answer. So, I don't know if he thinks it's a message that he wants to tell, or I know at one point he even brings up like trying to give like some nuance to Columbus and make him a little more interesting than just this horrible man that came and killed everybody. But I thought it was great that he brought up all these points about these characters, about how this particular father wanted black slaves, and to deal with slave traders. And he's discussing how these details are purposely being left out of the film. It's what liberals do a lot of time with certain figures, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Obama, or pretty much
even John McCain.
Like they conveniently forget all the horrible things that they did at one point and try to look at all the good things they did, and it's like it washes the slate clean. But it doesn't work like that, right? Like you still have to admit their faults and their sins, because it's an important part of history and of their character. But yeah, and like, Anton continues, he even calls out the actors themselves as they're asking these native people like how to say water in their language. He's like, how long are you really going to remember that for? Like he's just like, stop with the silly platitudes. And, these people he says you could donate your food, your leftovers, and they could feed their family for a month. Like he's calling out just the hypocrisy of the whole thing.
He's very ballsy in that way, which once again, why be a part of it? But but I really like that. Once again, just another complicated character. I don't really think she gets enough of an arc, which sucks. But Maria, she is the individual who's doing a lot of the BTS stuff. She's documenting the creation of the film and everything.
Right.
And, she is one of the first to be like, we should really be documenting the water war, instead of just documenting what's going on behind the scenes of the film. And, she pretty much stays the same from beginning to end. If I can be so bold as to say that, I think she's a fine character. I wish they would have given her a little bit more, but yeah, I really like the idea that
she was automatically empathizing with these people. Yep. She's there when they're digging the ditch for the water, and then the water company comes and tells them they're basically gonna take it, and then they chase them off. And she's like kind of like, wow, this is big. I got to record this stuff and follow these events. She's like, she even says, I think to Costa at one point, like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. We have to capture their story.
I also want to note that I caught it mostly with Anton, but when he's speaking as Columbus, I didn't catch it a lot with the others, but definitely with him, like you can tell they're speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
And, for those who may not know, Spanish from Spain has like a lot of soft letters that come across almost as lisps, like, so that's why Ibiza is Abiza, but it's pronounced Ibiza, and like a lot of his words are coming out very soft, like Spanish, like Spain Spanish, and I just thought that was a great attention to detail.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. One cool thing that I noticed is when Daniel's talking to his people about how they're gonna deal with this company trying to take the water from them, he says they're gonna vote, and he calls them comrades, and I was like, fuck yeah.
Yes, yeah. So what's so funny? I had a feeling that you would mention that, because he was like, oh, like compañeros, like comrades. I think it does like literally translate to like comrade. I'm not sure if it means like comrade. Like,
yeah.
It's more like everybody, people,
but,
partners.
But that being said, it is a lot of these countries like Venezuela and stuff that are the ones that are going towards socialism. It's been a big part of of the Americas, of many of the countries going that direction. Which maybe it was.
And I don't believe in this theory, but they say that bisexuality is just a bus stop on the the bus to Gay Town. I don't believe in that, but I'd say socialism is just a bus stop, on the ride to Communist Town.
In a way,
that's right, Communist City. I have a question for you, because this kind of came to me. Do you think an American version of this movie would be cool?
No.
Why not?
Because there's no victory at the end. And it would be a story that doesn't really have a...
It would have to be fiction.
Yeah, it would have to be fiction.
Obviously.
Anytime this happens here, it gets shut down, and there's no hope.
Well, you know what? We can make it about the Canadian natives that you just talked about last episode, right? Do that, and like at the end, they end up buying that fish plant or whatever it was.
Fish
yeah,
plant.
like fish plant or whatever the fuck. What was it? Was it a fish plant? What the fuck was it?
What's a
What
fish
was it?
plant? It was, a fishing company, and their.
I'm sure that they
their
process
warehouse.
fish at some sort of factory plant.
It's just a funny way to put it. It's fish plant.
Anyway, no, but yeah, that's a pretty good point. Because I was thinking, I was like, you could literally do this with like a variety of different historical figures throughout the history of the United States, because they are all Christopher Columbus in their own way.
Right.
And, a variety of different Native American tribes throughout the United States, because, they're all the Tainos in their own way. And then you go back and forth with maybe like, Standing Rock or something like that. But but that is a good point. It's like we don't really have the same victories in the United States that they have, and I don't even want to say the victories they have in South America. It was one victory. But yeah, I was like, like you could very well do an American version of this.
It would ring false, I think.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't trust them to do it accurately.
Taylor Sheridan.
Or yeah, like I just don't think that it would be done in the same way. I feel like it would be, it would somehow be like pro-capitalism, and they would definitely like change aspects of the story to fit, the American dream theme, whatever you want to call it. I just, so like I feel like that's what we do every time we take like a foreign film and we remake it. We lose an aspect of what made it so special.
I think that's a really valid point, actually. So thanks for bringing it up. And it's interesting you say that, because you're like, oh, it will be like this, this pro-capitalist film. So I had to watch this one movie in college that I did not realize was preparing me for who I am now. Because a big part of my college education was taking movies and analyzing them and analyzing the social and political themes within them, and that's how the podcast happened. Like I never looked for that stuff in movies before certain classes, but there's this one, and the moment where all of the women are the ones who are confronting the multinational people, it reminded me of this movie that came out in '54 called Salt of the Earth. And I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah. So, we're going to we'll do it on the podcast one day. Wow, made for only $250,000. Anyway, at New Mexico's Empire Zinc Mine, Mexican-American workers protest the unsafe work conditions and unequal wages compared to their Anglo counterparts. Ramon Quintero helps organize the strike, but he is shown to be a hypocrite by treating his pregnant wife, Esperanza, with a similar unfairness. When an injunction stops the men from protesting, however, the gender roles are reversed and women find themselves on the picket lines while the men stay at home. So that's the basic thing. And I also put into the show notes a bit about women in labor history, which is brought to you by the ZinnEducationProject.org. Once again, in the name of Howard Zinn. But a little bit more about Salt of the Earth is that this movie it had a lot going against it. And I just want to read an excerpt from historynet.com. It says, it required a great deal of optimism to make a left-leaning movie like Salt of the Earth in the 1950s, but director Herbert Biberman was, by many accounts, a great optimist. The director of now-forgotten films such as Meet Nero Wolfe and The Master Race, Biberman had helped found the Screen Directors Guild, which later became the Directors Guild of America. He was also a communist and one of many movie professionals who found inspiration in the Soviet Union, or at least what dictator Joseph Stalin allowed the world to see of the Soviet Union. And this last part, throughout the 1930s, the Communist Party USA remained active in Hollywood, establishing guilds to give writers and actors bargaining clout against the studios and fighting against fascism abroad by championing the Spanish Republic and rallying against the Third Reich. So there was a lot to do with the Red Scare and Hollywood, and a lot of pro-union films were considered to be pro-communist films as well, which it blows my mind, because how many conservative union workers now are so anti-communist. Meanwhile, the whole cornerstone of communism is the working class and standing up for the working person, and that's exactly what unions are. But yeah, so this is very Salt of the Earth to me, because that movie itself does have a lot of women throwing their bodies in the way for the cause, and that's kind of what this reminded me of. But I was like, oh, holy shit. And it's so funny, I didn't know that that communism actually was that big in the U.S. at one point. And, that's probably why some of, like, the greatest creative works are, like, have, like, pro-socialist, anti-capitalist messages.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever heard of the pink tide?
I don't think so.
So that was, like, the wave of leftism in Latin America. Like, it was, as all these countries became socialist or democratic socialist, and it was pretty much, from like the early 2000s through like 2012 to 2015, when unfortunately a lot of them were toppled, or the conservatives took over the countries again. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's just interesting that I can't remember where I saw this, but I read that it was kind of almost like a way of bucking the imperialist takeover by going such a left way, right? Like of getting rid of the remnants of these conquerors. And I think that's
Wow.
really interesting, that was the way they chose to do it in modern day Latin America.
I did not know that. This has been a very educational episode, I think.
It has.
But yeah, Ty, what else did you have about this film? Do you have any fun facts or just other notes?
Just a couple more notes. One was the fact that they used live rounds against the protesters. I thought that was pretty insane.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if you caught that. They over the radio they start talking about how they start using live rounds, and that you see bodies.
I thought you
falling.
meant behind the fucking scenes, Ty.
No.
I thought they went with less lethal rounds. I was like, man, they really went method. They're using beanbags.
I meant the actual protests.
I guess that sounds.
But even the fact,
right.
it's already deadly enough using like a rubber bullet, for example, but then to fire actual rounds into protesters, and that's why you had people like Balin who's bleeding to death because they were so severely injured. I thought the brutality of the police and the army was pretty appalling to see.
And actually, I want to cut you off real quick just to mention that it is uncanny how well this film translates over to an American perspective, mostly because of the uprising. Like we are, I know I've said it before and I'll say it a few more times. We are a country built on protest. Now, that whole protest was, a lot of protests have been done by white people who might not have been great people overall in history. But overall, the more I learn about just how most of them have been labor and class protests, though. There are the race ones, but the labor and class protest ones are the ones that really bring out the military. And, that's always the case. They always had to bring out the military to strike people down. And while this movie takes place in 2010 and is based on the Cochabamba water wars of 97 through 99, it still is very, very applicable to today, which is terribly unfortunate.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of protesters, you have water protectors, squaring up with a militarized police force, just trying to fight for their rights.
And it brings up a really valid point, though. Why should anyone have to pay for water? It literally comes from the earth, right? The fact that there's private companies that control water and sell it to you is pretty fucking inhumane, no matter where you are.
But it started off as a Eurocentric thing.
It did, yeah.
Because honestly, I haven't actually heard this from any of the native stuff I've been listening to or reading about, but I'm pretty sure giving the land back to them just means giving the land, just not owning it. Because they didn't own the land either. They didn't even view it as owning anything. The Europeans were the ones who came over and made it that way. I just don't understand how people can come here, claim a certain piece of land, and then just own it, have people pay for this public piece of earth, and then you set up lines, and then when people cross those lines, you get mad at them and give them hysterectomies. It just really doesn't make any sense when you look at it from such a I guess outside the glass point of view, outside looking in. But yeah, that's what it is. And that's the whole title of the movie, right? He says, even the rain. He's like, even the rain that falls on our heads, we can't even collect the water that's given to the earth. We can't collect the water that falls on our heads. They're privatizing even the rain. They're privatizing everything.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, shit. You
know? Imperialists only want one thing, and it's fucking disgusting.
Well, that was a good use of that.
Thank you.
They do, man. They're fucking capitalists and shit. Fucking scumbags, bro.
What else I got? So the scene where they're burning Daniel's character and other native characters alive, right, as an example to the people.
Yes, Hatui's death.
Right, it's a great scene, and they all start screaming his name. And
editor Mike Booch coming in here to let you know that we didn't actually discuss what Hatui said during his death, and it was so badass that I had to break into the podcast and tell you. So in the movie Even the Rain, they show him burning at the stake, and one of the priests says, you have to know the difference between heaven and hell, and I'll baptize you, that way you can be forgiven for your sins and go to heaven. And Hatui asks, do Christians go to heaven? And the priest says, yeah, good Christians do. And he spits in the priest's face, kicks the crucifix out of his hand, and says, then send me to hell. According to a resource that I'll include in the show notes, he actually said, his last words were, I would rather burn in hell forever than spend one day in paradise with Spaniards. So I thought that was pretty fucking awesome. Fuck the colonizers, and that was amazing. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks for listening this far.
And someone was like, now his name will live on forever. They'll never forget it. It's this really great scene. It's really inspiring. And then right afterwards, the police come to arrest Daniel. And what happens, right? All the people rise up, and they literally topple the cop car, tackle the cops, right, who have guns in their hands, and let Daniel escape. And it was so surreal seeing these modern day police arresting them in their native outfits from the scene.
That was so great.
Yeah, man. It was just wow, it's still fucking happening, right? Like it's right there in front of you. And I think that was also a big moment for Costa too, that he sees that, because he actually runs over and goes, calm down, right? And he steps in front of the police with their guns out and tries to protect, the extras.
What? He totally did. And I didn't even recognize it that early on.
Yeah, like it wasn't like a big moment.
He's becoming a ride or die, bro.
Yeah, but yeah, like he's even realizing like this is going way too far. I can't just stand here and let this happen. And I think that's kind of the beginning of like his arc really changing there. And I want to talk about the very end, where Costa goes to talk to Daniel, and Daniel's very emotional, and he's got tears in his eyes, and he says to him, they're basically just talking.
Even the rain.
Yeah. They're talking about what's coming next, and Costa says to Daniel he'll help him with bail-in. And he asks him what he's going to do, and Daniel says he'll survive like always, because that's what they do best. And then he asks Costa if he'll ever come back, and he says no. He's very honest, says I don't think so. And as much as he cares about them and he wants to help them and do the right thing, he won't come back here. He won't put himself in this position again, and that's his privilege, right? That's something that he gets to have, that he gets to go home to Spain, where he's fairly wealthy, and gets to live his life free and not scared like these people do. But it's still a nice moment. They have that emotional embrace, and Daniel gives him that gift, which he opens, and it's water, right? It's the water they fought so hard to save and keep free, and he gives it.
Yeah, it's Bobby Boucher's little bottle that he has at the end of Waterboy.
There you go.
It's always cold. It's always cold, the water.
Yeah, it's always cold. Yeah, I just thought it was a great little moment, a little symbol, of what Daniel was fighting for that whole time, and that Costa finally understood at the end. He finally got it.
That was beautiful, because the more I thought about it, the more I'm like that was the water that they fought for. But guess what? Costa made himself a part of that fight too.
He did.
He put his body on the line a couple of times. Obviously, not as much as somebody like Daniel did. He was a tourist, but that was his keepsake. That was the water that he put his body on the line for. And I thought that was really great.
Yeah, it was great. They didn't go for like white savior, where he's the one like ended the protest. All he did was just drive and get his daughter to safety. It was Daniel and his people that did that, but. Again, like you said,
one person with his privilege.
But still, it was still a symbol like, hey, you still helped us earn this. So, never forget that, and hopefully that does stay with him. And I also thought, it was interesting that Costa does mention he has a son, right? A 14-year-old son. And Anton asks him, what's he like? And Costa says, I don't know. I don't really know.
Oh,
He
yeah.
lives with his
He lives with
mom.
his
Like he
mother.
does, and I felt like that maybe was a little bit of why he also got closer with Belen. Like he didn't have
Yeah,
that
that's a
relationship
great
with his
point.
his
I
own
didn't think about
child
that.
from his job, right? It pulled him away, and while he doesn't talk about it a lot, here he is bonding with this other child, and I think maybe hopefully when he gets back home, that's something that sticks with him, and he does reach out and he does try to fix that relationship.
Yeah, man. What a great arc. What a great film.
Yeah,
It's
it's good, man. It's really good.
also listen to the outtakes if you want to hear a little more about my opinions on Columbus. And you know what? Because partially I was thinking, oh, let's make this also a Columbus bashing episode, but I'm so glad that we didn't because it's not about him.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, it's not his story at all.
Take him out and think of all you've learned, just like Monica said in that one episode of Yellowstone, out of 30 fucking episodes that don't have to do.
Yeah, I mean, even Anton, who played
stuff.
Columbus, he really empathized with these people. At the end, he gets out and he's giving them water, and he's not escaping, he's not running away on that plane. I think he even says at one point, like, we owe it to them to tell their story. I think meaning, the original film they were making, but at the same time, he does understand that these people are suffering. And it's a huge moment for everyone to realize, and I wish Sebastian did too. It's sad that the only thing he could focus on is his film, but I think they tell a good story here.
I think that is actually a great. I mean, my last thought will be based off that sentiment, and it's that it's like you always say, everyone has a part to play, right? You may not be the person on the front lines, you may not be able to be, but in this movie, everybody plays their part. Even Anton gets out and helps a little bit. The one woman is filming it. Costa, he does a little more than the other people, but even then, like, as far as like what the actual water warriors are doing, he's not doing that much, but he does a little bit. He uses his privilege to save one life. And that's that's enough. Like and once again, it is his privilege. This movie is about how to be an ally. Don't just talk, don't just give platitudes, don't just host a third-rate podcast with your best friend as an excuse to actually get to talk to him for an hour a week. Actually do something. Don't just sew some patches onto a vest and then never go to any protests. Actually do something.
Yeah,
I think
something.
That's the message of the movie.
You know what's crazy? Bolivia was not free from Spanish rule until 1825. That's a long time.
Is that late? Is that a long time?
That's a pretty long time, man. You got to think about the 1800s was, almost Civil War times. And
it started probably when? 1500s?
Yeah, I mean, that's, when did Columbus sail? In 1492? 1492, right? Yeah. And, a Venezuelan man actually liberated, like, all these Latin American countries, Peru and Bolivia, and, it took fighting and wars, and Bolivia actually got its name from his name. His name is Simón Bolívar. But I thought that his story is very interesting. We can link it in the show notes. But and even today they're still really not free, right? Like no one's really free, and that's really sad.
No one really is. You're only like allowed to exist to an extent. But like we said in the last episode, existence is resistance to an extent. So, yeah. So those of you who are feeling like Mr. Miracle did in that one book, I don't want to bring up the S word right now, but listen, existence is resistance. It's the best thing you could do is just exist. And that is it for me. What about for yourself, Ty? You good?
That's it. That's what I got.
Dude, thanks so much for suggesting this movie. This was a movie your girlfriend knew about, correct?
Yeah, she showed it to me last year. We watched it together, and we both were pretty impressed with it. So
tell her to keep them coming, man. Tell her to keep them coming. I'm all for it. This concludes our Indigenous Spotlight Month. It is actually, I think it's been like one of my favorite in a while, even more so than the horror one.
It's been a good one. We've learned a lot. I think we've learned a lot.
That's honestly why, and hopefully if you're listening to this, you have too. And really, we are just the tip of the iceberg. go to the show notes and sources. There's lots of useful information.
Yeah, we're just trying to
there.
get you interested in it, but hopefully it does, and you want to learn a little bit more because it's the only way we can improve and get better, right? We got to learn this stuff. We literally have to learn history to not repeat it, which we so unfortunately don't practice. But
yeah, I mean, like today is it's literally just yesterday, but like, with a new coating of paint on it. Like things are very, very similar. In the meantime, in between time, pop heads, please make sure that whatever podcast you're listening to us on, that you rate and review us and subscribe. Make sure those episodes get downloaded. Helps us a lot, even if you don't listen to them right away. If you're following us on YouTube, that's awesome. Thank you. Make sure you're liking the videos, subscribe to the channel, and support us via Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can be part of what keeps this podcast going and have access to a variety of exclusive content for your eyes and ears only. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. Email us at politipoppodcast@gmail.com. And as always, find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. Special thanks to all of you listeners. Godspeed on this Thanksgiving Day week, or Indigenous Peoples Day, whatever you want to call it. Good luck to all of you who are actually seeing family, and good luck if it's more than 10 people.
Yes.
But yes, and special thanks to all of you and to Antonia Chava for logo design for the Politipop podcast. I've been Mike Booch.
I've been Ty.
And no matter what you're eating, no matter what you're thinking, no matter what you're watching, listening to, reading, remember to never stop thinking, never stop learning, make America indigenous again, and always read between the lines.
And scene.
Aha!